Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate Day number 1224, 1224, August the 18th, 2020, Tuesday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, let's cover the last 24 hours of Spygate. Not a whole lot of things going on, but there's a couple things definitely worth talking about, so let's get to it. Now, we learned yesterday that Kevin Kleinsmith is going to appear in court to plead guilty on August the 19th. That would be tomorrow. Very quickly, just as I said a couple days ago, this plea hearing is going to happen very quickly. As you can see, it did. And now, what's interesting about this is that the judge who's going to be ruling over this, which not much to rule on, the defendant's going to come in and plead guilty, but not much to talk about there. But the judge who's there is going to be the chief FISA court judge, Boasberg. That's right, Boasberg. Now, he is an Obama appointee, but he was probably on the FISA court when those faulty FISAs were passed along by Kleinsmith and his friends. It's also Boasberg who made the ruling back several months ago, who is the one who put his foot down and said, yeah, we want a full investigation. I want to know this, and this. We want this all aired out. So it was Boasberg who, once Collier stepped down, Boasberg took over, and he's the one that dropped the hammer on the FBI and said, okay, I want this, and this, and this. And he wants to know everything about what happened. He wants it all out. So it's very interesting that Kleinsmith is going to be appearing before one of the very judges who would have been on the FISA court, one of the very judges who may have approved one of those four fraudulent FISAs that Kleinsmith put forward. So you can bet that Boasberg is probably not going to be very happy to see Mr. Kleinsmith standing in front of him, considering Mr. Kleinsmith is the person, along with his friends, who lied to Judge Boasberg and his colleagues on the FISA court. Now, there's a lot of corruption going on with the FISA court. There's a lot of things that we don't know. I'm not suggesting that Mr. Boasberg or Judge Boasberg is this, clean as the wind-driven snow sort of character. I don't know how clean this guy is, but we do know that once Collier stepped down and Boasberg took over, that he's the one that demanded that the FBI produce all this information about everything that they did, and make sure that it's public, make sure that it's publicly known what the FBI did to the FISA court. That was Judge Boasberg's directives, of course. That's where they came from, Judge Boasberg. So anyway, it's kind of, I don't know if funny is the right word, but it's kind of, interesting, I guess, that Kleinsmith is going to be facing one of the very FISA court judges that he and his friends manipulated, lied to, and presented fraudulent applications to. So you can bet that Boasberg's not going to have a lot of patience with Kleinsmith, but then again, it's going to be a pretty much open and shut deal. It's already been, publicly announced, and the attorney for Kleinsmith has agreed that his client is going to plead guilty to, of course, falsifying, lying essentially to the FISA court, falsifying documents. Now, there's many other charges that he could have been charged with, and I suspect that he was probably told that, and that's probably why he's been a cooperating witness. My guess is that this indictment has been just sort of under seal, because chances are this indictment was given months ago, or maybe it was just recently done as a result of negotiations for a plea deal. But something tells me that, just a hunch, that Kleinsmith's probably been cooperating with Durham for quite some time. I don't think that Durham would give him this plea deal and then hope that he decides to become a cooperating witness. And there was nothing in the charging document about there being an order or anything that Kleinsmith having agreed to being a cooperating witness. And normally, according to Andrew McCarthy, that would be in the charging document. So it tells us possibly a couple things, but the thing it probably tells me is that maybe there's no need for Durham to have put in there that he's going to be a cooperating witness, because as far as we know, Durham's done with him. For all we know, Kleinsmith has already cooperated fully. probably for weeks and weeks he's been cooperating. And so there's no need for him to further cooperate. Durham's got everything he needs from him, and now that he does, he's releasing the charge on him, the indictment, because chances are the indictment was going to be filed. There's probably going to be multiple charges. Kleinsmith's attorney comes in once he gets a letter, a target letter, saying, hey, your client's been targeted, or what have you. He probably comes in with his client, says, yeah, we'd like to negotiate a deal. We'd like to do something. Durham probably says, okay, well, let's talk about what you can offer me, blah, 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 blah. They come to an agreement, and Durham says, okay, well, I'm going to point my investigation. I don't want to charge you yet, but I need to charge you just to make sure we have this agreement. You're going to cooperate. So maybe what they did was Durham probably got the charge together, sealed the indictment, set on it, allowed so that they had it locked in. They had a sealed indictment. They had it locked in. Then Kleinsmith then sings, whatever, tells Durham what he wants to know, and then once that process is finished and Durham's pretty much done, he says, okay, now I'm going to release the indictment. It's a pled down indictment, only one of what could have been quite a few different and more severe charges. And I think that's looking like what may have happened here. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I have no inside skinny on the deal. I'm just suggesting that may be what happened here, is that this indictment was probably there, maybe for weeks or months. It has been sealed. It's now been unsealed. And Kleinsmith has probably already been cooperating. Durham's probably done with Kleinsmith. There's nothing more to talk about. Everything he had, Durham now probably has. And so go ahead, and he's finished with Kleinsmith, so he can go ahead, do the indictment. It's a definitely pled down to a much lesser charge, because quite honestly, there's probably a half dozen different charges I've heard that could have been thrown against Kleinsmith. It all would have been all felonies, and could have been compiled charges, 4 or 5 felonies, which he would have been spending a lot of time in prison, which is probably why he's been cooperating. But the one that would have been the most devastating, that could have landed him like 20 years in prison, 15 to 20, would have been if he would have been charged, and he could have been charged with 18 USC violation, which would be tampering with evidence. Tampering with evidence. Tampering with evidence is much, much worse than a 1001 violation, which is what he's looking at now. It carries a much longer sentence, 15 years, along with some fines. And Durham, of course, has probably still got that in his pocket. And so in the event that they don't have a deal, and it's just a promise, if Kleinsmith doesn't produce, then Durham could always break out this 18 USC violation on him, and he'd be looking at much, much more time in prison, and they would prosecute that. But again, my gut is telling me that what we're seeing here is not the beginning of the Kleinsmith situation. I think we're seeing the end of it. I think Kleinsmith has already been cooperating, and that basically he's already given Durham everything. Durham's now done with him, and now he's ready to go, and so he unseals the indictment. You see how fast it came about. So they can go ahead. He's gotten everything he wants from Kleinsmith. Kleinsmith gets hit with a fairly minor felony. He probably will do a little jail time, probably not much, but probably what Durham got from him in terms of information was probably well worth allowing him to plead down to a much lesser charge. But in the event that that's not the case, in the event that he's anticipating that Kleinsmith's going to talk to him, Durham always has another 3 or 4 felonies he could throw in on top of Kleinsmith if he doesn't produce, including this 18 USC violation of tampering with evidence, which again, that begins at 15-year minimum prison sentence. So I don't think Kleinsmith wants to mess around with this type of a violation, a tampering with evidence violation, which is why, if he hasn't already, he will sing like a bird. So rest easy, my friends. There's no question whether or not Kleinsmith's going to give up his compadres. He absolutely is. Unless he wants to spend the better second half of his life in prison. And he doesn't. But yeah, he'll be going in front of Judge Boasberg, one of the very FISA court judges that he committed fraud against. So my guess is he's going to get a pretty nasty look from the judge. And also, there's something else I think that we need to focus on a little bit here. Lindsey Graham, of course, referring to this this briefing that was given to the Senate Intelligence Committee by, now we know, Priestap. Lindsey Graham has done 2 or 3 interviews about this now, and he continues to repeat the fact that he was thanking Inspector General Huckleberry Horowitz for finding the memo, which shows that Priestap and 4 other FBI agents came to the Senate Intelligence Committee in February of 2018 and fraudulently briefed them on the primary subsource and the dossier, and lied to them. Now, as Lindsey Graham has pointed out on a couple of interviews, this was not in Huckleberry Horowitz's Inspector General report. Why not? I mean, this is a big deal. This is not something you should leave out, especially in context of everything that Huckleberry Horowitz was supposed to be investigating. He leaves out this memorandum showing that Priestap fraudulently briefs the Senate Intelligence Committee in February of 2018. He leaves that out? I mean, that's a huge piece of information. That's a crime. How many other crimes do you think Huckleberry Horowitz left out of the IG report? How many other things do you think were left out of Huckleberry Horowitz's report that would show there was political bias? As Tom Fitton has told us, there's still thousands of pages of emails that we've never been able to get, or the Judicial Watch has never been able to get, Nunes was never able to get, Goodlatte Gowdy Committee was never able to get. It's there. They just won't turn it over. But Horowitz would have seen it. How much other stuff do you think is out there that Horowitz knows about that he didn't tell us about? As bad as, it's funny, the Horowitz report comes out and it's like, wow, this is damning. This is horrible. This lays it all out. This is what they did. What if what Horowitz told us was just the best he could do? What if the really, really bad stuff he kept from us? Now, Horowitz was in a very sticky position, because it's not like he could put out a really fraudulent IG report and cover everything up, because Barr is his boss, he's the Attorney General, and Durham had already been on the case for almost a year at that time. And if Huckleberry Horowitz tried to run a fake IG report on us, Barr and Durham would have blown the whistle on him. He had no choice but to write a fairly damning report. But it appears to me that he has carefully selected certain things to be left out of that report. And this memorandum showing that Priestap fraudulently briefed the Senate Intelligence Committee in February of 2018, along with 4 other FBI agents whose names we have not been privy to, that's a pretty major deal there. That should have been in the IG report. That is a crime. And I'll bet there's other crimes that Horowitz left out of his report. Remember, Huckleberry Horowitz is the custodian. That's what the Inspector General is. He's the custodian. He's the guy that you bring in to clean up the mess. If you can't sweep it under the rug with some congressional hearing, if you can't just get the media to go away or get other people to go away whenever something like this pops up, then you have to bring in the Inspector General. Their job is to come in and clean up the mess with as little damage done to the institution as possible, whichever institution they are the Inspector General for. In this case, it was the FBI and the DOJ. Horowitz's job was to come in and clean up the mess with doing as little damage to the institution, the DOJ and the FBI, as possible. That's what Inspector General Huckleberry Horowitz was charged with. He's not there to tell us all the bad stuff that happened. He's there to cover up all the bad stuff that happened. But he was in a difficult position because he had Barr and Durham looking over his shoulder. So I think it's fair to say that there was a lot of things probably that Huckleberry Horowitz left out of the Inspector General report. We're finding out that this is one of them. And that's a question I think if I'm Lindsey Graham, I'd be calling Huckleberry Horowitz back, saying, why did you leave this out? I mean, this is a crime. How many other things did you leave out? Is there anything else you'd like to tell us before we find out? That's what I would do. Paul Sperry. You know, he tweeted something out, a couple things out today, and one of them I really want to focus on. Because it's something that's been going through my mind for months now. For months now, that I've been wondering about. So let me get to that. There was a couple of tweets. First of all, Paul Sperry tweeting out, of course, that the FISA on Carter Page was just to spy on the Trump campaign. They knew he was clean. Yes, indeed. That's what Durham has figured out, and that's why this is so bombshell. We were talking about the other day that Durham's discovered that this was a criminal investigation, not really a counterintelligence investigation. And now Durham understands exactly what was done. Carter Page was targeted, and we now know that they knew when they targeted him that he was not a Russian spy or anything else. They knew he worked for the CIA. They knew Carter Page was clean, but they spied on him anyway, even though they knew he was clean. Why is that? Well, because their attempts at Papadopoulos and Michael Flynn apparently would not be enough to get a FISA. But a FISA would give you a window into the Trump campaign. They needed somebody in the circle, someone 2 leaps away from the president, and Carter Page would have fit the bill. He's the one that they were able to get the FISA on. It could have been anybody. They didn't give a damn. They just needed a FISA on somebody. Trump was the target, not Carter Page. That's what this tells you. But if you really want to know, and here's the thing that's been running through my mind for a very long time. And Paul Sperry talks about it right here. Paul Sperry says that John Durham will eventually, if he has not already, examine what the FBI collected from the Carter Page FISAs, and that will reveal the truth. It will reveal the truth about who the target was and what they did with the information they collected. Nails it. Sperry nails it. This has been running through my mind for a very long time. I've been saying, you know, what actually really got this going through my mind was the Sally Yates hearings. And when they got to the point where Ted Cruz is hitting her on the FISA and on Carter Page, and she says, oh, well, you know, we got and he was saying, that's spying on the Trump campaign. And then she comes back to him and says, no, he had already left the Trump campaign. He was no longer with the Trump campaign when they got the FISA on him. Now, obviously, we're all sitting back at home watching this and saying, okay, you got her, Ted, you got her. But he doesn't. He doesn't follow up. He moves on. What he should have said is, wait a minute, Sally. You are aware, like everyone else in this room, and probably just about everyone watching here on TV or on YouTube, you know damn good and well that a Title I FISA allows them to go back as far as they want to go. It doesn't matter if Carter Page was no longer on the campaign, that he had left the campaign the previous month. They can go back years with the Title I FISA warrant. So when he was on the campaign or not on the campaign doesn't matter. You get a FISA on Carter Page, you can go back as far as you want. So the timing about when they got the Carter Page FISA doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. That's what Ted Cruz should have said to Sally, and he should have pointed out that she knows that. And she's playing the game. And then he should have also pointed out that it gives you 2 hops. You get Carter Page, everyone he talked to, and everyone they talked to. In other words, if Carter Page communicated with anybody on Trump's team, such as a Manafort or anyone like that, they certainly communicated with Trump. Getting Carter Page gets you Trump. Sally Yates knew that, Cruz knew that, and he let her walk. Now, once that is all going on, and I'm sitting there watching it on YouTube, and I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking, you know, the easiest way to blow up Silly Sally, and if I was her, I'd be very concerned about this. The easiest way to blow up Silly Sally is simply for John Durham to say, okay, let's just see if it's as innocent as you're portraying it to be. You weren't interested in Carter Page when he was in the Trump campaign, Sally. You only cared about Carter Page now. And only about what Carter Page was doing with Russians. Not the campaign. That's what you're telling us, Sally. Nothing to do with the Trump campaign. You're not spying on the Trump campaign. It's just Carter Page. And it's after he's left the Trump campaign. He's been gone for a month and a half. Well, if that's the truth, you could find out real easily if that's the truth. All you need to do, and if you're John Durham, and I assume he's already done this, you simply need to take a look at the data that they collected on Carter Page with those 4 FISAs. Take a look at what they collected. What were they collecting? That will tell you everything about who the target was, what they were really interested in. Nails it on the head, Paul Sperry. And that's what was going through my mind during that whole conversation when Ted Cruz was interviewing Sally Yates. He should have called her out. I mean, it's the first thing crossing my mind when she said, "Yeah, well, he was no longer on the campaign. We weren't spying on the Trump campaign. It was Carter Page, and he was no longer on the campaign." That's where I would have locked her heels right there. Say, "Oh, no. Title I, FISA lets you go back as far as you want, and you get 2 hops. You had a window into the Trump campaign." That's what he should have said. Because then her only statement then in defense would have been, "Well, that's not what we were doing." Boom. That's not what we were doing. That's what she would have said. We were focused on Carter Page. Boom. Why didn't Ted Cruz ask the question? Knowing good and well she would have only one of 2 options. To either say, "Well, you're right, Ted. We did have 2 hops. We could go back as far as we want, and yeah, that would give us a window of the Trump campaign." All true. But that's not what we were doing. That's what she would have had to say. He had her. He had her and he let her slip off the hook. Because John Durham has likely looked at what they were collecting on Carter Page, which would tell you exactly who they were really investigating and what their interest was. And more importantly, what they did with the information they collected from Carter Page. Bet John Durham's got it. And if I was John Durham, man, I would call Silly Sally in, because he's got her anyway. He's got her lying to Congress, or lying to him. I'd call Silly Sally and ask her the exact same question. I'd call and say, "Silly Sally, I was watching on TV, and you said that you weren't spying on the Trump campaign. You want to tell me that? Because I've been looking at the evidence that was collected with those Carter Page FISAs. And they tell a different story, Sally. I think I've got you lying to Congress, Sally. You gonna lie to me too?" And I'd say, "Sally, why were you really spying on Carter Page? Give it up." But unfortunately, I'm not the prosecutor. I'm just like you, sitting back watching it all, asking a lot of questions that other people should be asking. Mr. Cruz, this guy is a top-notch lawyer, constitutional lawyer, has argued cases in front of the Supreme Court. Now, maybe he moved on because they only get 2 minutes to ask questions or 5 minutes to ask questions. But man, when you got somebody on the hook, you don't let them off the hook. I mean, you set the hook, man. When you feel that, it's like bass fishing, you feel that nibble, you set the hook. And he didn't. Hopefully Durham was watching. And hopefully he does have the information that was collected on Carter Page with the FISAs, so he knows exactly what they were doing, who the real target was, and what they did with all that information they collected. Because I'm pretty sure what they did with the information they got from the illegal FISAs was also illegal. They got an illegal FISA, then they took the information from the illegal FISA and did more illegal shit with it. That's what you're going to find. You don't have to be a genius to figure this stuff out. I'm really hoping that we learn a lot more. I mean, the charging statement by Durham was brilliant. It closed all the doors. It left Kleinsmith no way out. But it certainly left a lot of questions, certainly things that hopefully will come out at some point in a report or something else. I mean, Durham did what he needed to do to get Kleinsmith on paper, to get him indicted, so that he could get the information he needs from Kleinsmith so he can move on. But you can bet he's asked Kleinsmith a lot of other questions. He was involved in a lot of other things, going all the way back to the Rotten Reverend Clinton email investigation, going all the way back to, the FISAs, the dossier stuff. He was part of the Crossfire Hurricane team, part of the small group. He's up to his eyeballs in all of it. But keep in mind, he was a lawyer who questioned Papadopoulos. He's the lawyer who told Papadopoulos, this is what happens to you when you support Donald Trump. I have no doubt that Kleinsmith was intimately involved in the attempted frame-up of Papadopoulos when he was over in the Mediterranean, over in Israel. When they tried to set him up with the $10,000 in this so-called Israeli spy or whoever he is, who goes by the name Charles Tawil. I'm fascinated by that. It's a part of this whole story that seems to just never really get any traction. No one seems to focus on it. No one seems to talk about it. It's a critically important thing. Critically important. And I do hope that Durham or Barr or whoever, when they put out whatever type of report they're going to put out, in addition to all the prosecutions and indictments, plea deals and everything else, I do hope we get to the bottom of Mr. Tawil. But something tells me if he has anything to do with Israeli intelligence, they're going to sweep this under the rug. If it's going to be embarrassing to the Israelis, they're not going to talk about it. They're going to let it slide. That's what I think. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But I would sure like to know more about that. And I've seen Papadopoulos interviewed a freaking dozens of times. The only question I have for this son of a bitch at this point, having read his book, having watched him on many interviews, following his story, did you ever go give the 10 grand to Durham? Did you give the 10 grand to Durham? That's the only question I have. But you'll see Papadopoulos on interview after interview after interview, and all these so-called people really drilling down on Spygate. No one ever asked him. No one ever asked him. No one ever asks Papadopoulos if he's provided that $10,000, which he says he has, to Durham. Why do you think that is? Such an obvious question, man. You got the money. You got the money. In a normal FBI case, they get their hands on the money that was used for a bribe or some sort of a frame-up. They get the damn money immediately. And they track that money and they find out where it came from. Every investigator knows this. Most reporters know this. But for some reason, that whole episode that occurred over there in Israel with Papadopoulos and the $10,000 setup is almost like taboo. Talk about anything else, but you can't talk about Mr. Tawil. Why do you think that is? Maybe I'm just a curious person. So that's you know, I don't do social media. I do have a Facebook account, but that's only for just circle of friends that I grew up with, went to high school, college, military. Those are just friends of mine. I don't have cyber friends. I have actual friends. People I grew up with, my friends. We communicate on Facebook because we're all located all over the damn planet. It's how we stay in touch. And that's the only purpose of my Facebook account. I don't do all these other things. But if anybody has got like an account, a Twitter account or something like that, you may want to, because I think Papadopoulos and Maria Bartiromo both have Twitter accounts. You might want to get on Papadopoulos' Twitter and ask him if he provided that $10,000 to Durham and if it's being followed up on. You might ask Maria Bartiromo if the next time she has Papadopoulos on, she'll ask him if he's turned the $10,000 over to Durham to follow up on. Okay, thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. Take care, guys. See you. Bye.